Hello and good afternoon. My name is Kit Cabello of Hard Lens Media, and we are filming here at the Q4 radio station. You can listen to Hard Lens Media every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time on Q4 Radio. We have a lot of shows and topics to talk about, and today we have a very special interview with none other than Dr. Lora Chamberlain. You were on our show sometime earlier today. And so essentially for our viewers who are watching this on CAN TV, can you please introduce yourself and tell them about a little bit about your background?
Okay, great. So I'm Dr. Lora Chamberlain, and I'm a family physician. I'm an osteopathic physician, and I quit medicine in 2005 to become a full-time activist. But I've been an activist since the 90s. And I do primarily two things, and that's environmental. I was a lead organizer for Frack Free Illinois. We were pushing the moratorium on fracking in Illinois here a couple of years ago. And then also election integrity work. So right now, our group is called Clean Count Cook County. Clean Count Cook County, that's what we want. We want a clean count in Chicago, we want a clean count in suburban Cook County, and we do a lot of election integrity work, a lot of election advocacy, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Today. So, but let's actually get started with a very key point that really stays with a lot of voters, especially since right now a lot of people are trying to get actively involved in politics, and it's the aftermath of the 2016 primary that was between Hillary Clinton and Senator Bernie Sanders. She would go on to go forward to win the general election and lose to President Donald Trump. However, many progressives, independents, and other groups are questioning the legitimacy of her nomination and wins throughout the primary. And it should be noted that it has been made very clear by many groups and individuals that the DNC establishment and Clinton campaign were working together, thus committing election fraud. Now, Dr. Chamberlain, you were part of a group called Who's Counting, before it became Clean Count Cook County. And in regards to the Illinois primary between Senator Bernie Sanders and then Secretary Hillary Clinton, what did your group see and record during that March primary of 2016?
Right. So just to edify everybody, and that is on election night, they report these results out, but that's not really what's happening. In the bowels of the boards of elections in Chicago and suburban Cook County, there's thousands and thousands of ballots that have yet to be counted on election night. And there's all these processes after the election that you can go in and observe, especially if you're a member of a civic organization like ours, Clean Count Cook County. So we decided to take a bunch of burners. We had followed the very serious election fraud in the March primaries against Bernie, always benefiting Hillary, in 11 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. And there's a 100-page report called Democracy Lost that people can look up. It was written by lawyers for Election Justice USA. So just search Democracy Lost, and you can read what happened state after state after state to Bernie. We have always known that there were pockets of election fraud that seemed to be related to the Democratic Party in certain areas, like Chicago, okay? But we have never seen that kind of very widespread election fraud that really involved multiple political operatives in every state that we saw in those primaries, in those Democratic primaries. New York had purges of hundreds of thousands of voters. California had purges of hundreds of thousands of voters. Iowa caucuses were completely fraudulent. Even the Iowa Des Moines Register asked for a do-over after the caucuses. So it started right away. And the Bernie campaign, all of the Bernie supporters were really well connected on Facebook and Twitter. And so we really got reports from the ground going through primary after primary about how fraudulent these primaries were. And so you can read about it at Democracy Lost. We've always known that there was really widespread Republican operative mediated fraud. And the book that we recommend to people is called Code Red. Code Red, Computerized Election Theft in the New American Century by Jonathan Simon, and he's a Harvard statistician. And this really chronicles the Republican fraud that we've seen escalate since 2000, okay? And there's about 50 ways to steal an election. So there's a lot of ways.
50 ways.
50 ways or more. And, but the advent of electronic voting, okay, where you really can't see. Years ago, a couple decades ago, most of the election jurisdictions in the country, you would vote on a paper ballot, and you would go in, citizens would go in the night of the election, and they would hand count their paper ballots, and everybody could come and watch them hand counting. So there was a very high degree of transparency. But when you're voting on those election machines, do you see them counting anything?
No, very rarely.
No. Do you
or
see?
Not at all.
Not at all. Do you see the ballots? No.
No,
you know? So there's no transparency. Without transparency, without observability, it's very, very problematic, and it opens up the opportunity for political operatives within an election jurisdiction and hackers from outside an election jurisdiction to alter the vote counts, to manipulate the vote counts, to manipulate the voter registration rolls. So when we saw all this in the Democratic primary, we said, "Ooh, we're going to have to do something here in Chicago," and so we took a bunch of registered voters into the audits. There's a 5% retabulation after the election, and we went into the Chicago, the bowels of the Chicago Board of Elections and over at their warehouse, and we watched this 5% retabulation. 5% of our votes on the early voting machine and in the precincts are supposedly retabulated. But what we saw was really a sham retabulation. The workers were given the results that they were to obtain for, let's say they had this big roll full of ballots from one of the touchscreen machines, and they had to unroll it and count all the ballots. Well, they were told by the Board of Elections what they needed to achieve, okay? So let's say Bernie had 100 votes on this roll, and let's say Hillary had 90 votes, okay? They were told right off the bat what they had to achieve, what we call the recommended official results. And they would literally, at the start of it, they had these tally sheets where they had to mark their tallies, and they would count out 100 tallies. They'd put a little dot there or some indication. And when they got there, they stopped counting the votes. They wrote the votes on Post-it notes and threw them away, or they continued to tally them in pencil, and they just erased the Bernie votes and added the Hillary votes. Every single table had a little different scheme to make sure that they adhered to the official recommended results.
And that's what happened here in Illinois, especially when the final voting came through. Eventually our state and our superdelegates went to Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders subsequently lost.
Right.
Or I guess we want to call it air quote, he kind of lost Illinois.
We know that he had more votes than what was tallied. We could see them, you know, marking them and throwing them away or ignoring them. So we know that there was a problem.
Now, for a lot of our viewers who are watching this right now, we have seen firsthand since the 2016 election that a lot of people are talking more about the primary between Senator Bernie Sanders and Secretary Hillary Clinton. And the one thing that keeps being brought up the most during these conversations, especially about that primary, is that people are talking about election fraud. And since the corporate establishment media refused to acknowledge the election fraud that was happening in the Senator Bernie Sanders campaign, many people may not know the difference between election fraud and voter fraud. So what is election fraud? And especially for those of us who live in Illinois, what is its impact on past and current Illinois elections?
Okay, so voter fraud this is what Chris Kobach talks about, Trump talks about, and they talk about illegal aliens, illegal immigrants going in and trying to vote, trying to pretend they're American citizens and vote. I have never seen that. I cover 30, 40 precincts every single election, and I've never seen that. I've never seen a bus full of, illegal immigrants.
Or somebody wanting to vote twice.
Right. Now, I will tell you, like I said, there's 50 ways to steal an election. I have seen political operatives for some of the incumbents come in and try to vote and give addresses of vacant buildings, okay? Or, there's other schemes out there. But it's not illegal, just the average American citizen or an illegal immigrant trying to vote. That's not what's happening. This is kind of organized, what we call precinct level fraud, okay, election fraud. Election fraud is where political operatives or hackers, so political operatives and also operatives within election jurisdictions, are trying to manipulate the vote count in some way, either by altering the number of people that are registered to vote, who gets to vote, or altering the actual vote counts. And then there's outside hackers as well. And that's what a lot of people are worried about, because the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Agency and all these agencies have told us that the Russians hacked into 21 voter databases in 21 states. There's no reports of them actually altering votes, but there was some hacking of election databases. And so they're very worried that there's a possibility that our elections could be hacked. And I will tell you that there is a real worry about our elections being hacked, but we're worried more about political operatives than we are about Russia. But gosh darn, I'm not a member of the National Security Agency, and I don't know what kind of evidence they had. And I do believe that cyber warfare is a real thing. So here's what I say to voters, and that is, please, occupy your elections. They are our elections. They're not Rahm's elections or Madigan's elections or any, Bronner's elections. They're our elections. And we need to demand a level of transparency and accuracy that we are not getting right now. So we recommend everybody go to cleancouncookcounty.org, cleancouncookcounty.org. We did, after the March 2016 primary, some of the people that had come into the audit went on to sue the Chicago Board of Elections for their unlawful audit. And we lasted in court for about a year and a half, and then they had a high-powered legal team, and we kind of got booted out of court on a motion to dismiss. But we're ready to get back in there, and we did get some things. Both Chicago and suburban Cook County are going to get rid of their touchscreen voting machines. Not this election, not in the March primary, but probably by November. And they're going to go to these machines for early voting where you'll vote on a machine, but it will produce a paper ballot. And it'll force you to look at your paper ballot and make sure that it's correct, okay? And then they'll put it into a scanner. And we think this is a step up above that little toilet paper roll that they got on the side, yes, the cash register receipt that nobody looks at. So we feel like we got something for our efforts, and we definitely got the word out that there's, that our elections are probably problematic. So the solution, the antidote to, really fraudulent elections are more eyes, more people involved, citizen auditors, okay? And we have a series of recommendations. Can I go into our recommendations?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay,
absolutely.
Great. So voters. There's also all these kind of purges, cross-check, all this stuff going on. We would love for you to check your registration, your voter registration right now. The March primary is coming up. March 20th is election day. Early voting is going to start probably February 21st. It had to be pushed back a couple weeks because there's all these ballot wars going on, and where they're trying to kick candidates off the ballot, and a couple of them have gone to appellate court. So they had to push back early voting to February 21st. And we recommend that you, right now, as soon as you watch this, go to your election jurisdiction and check your voter registration. Make sure you're registered to your primary address, okay? Just make sure you're adhering to the law, okay? So that you don't get booted off the rolls. And if you're not there, re-register. You have till Sunday, March 4th, to re-register. If there's any problems with it, correct it. That's number one. Number two, we want you to vote on a paper ballot, a real sturdy paper ballot. That means election day, you can go in and ask for a paper ballot. Don't vote on the machine, but ask for a paper ballot and vote by mail. You can request, you fill out a form and you request a vote by mail sent to you, and then you fill it out in the privacy of your own home and you send it back by mail. So if you cannot make it on election day, please look into vote by mail. It's offered in every single jurisdiction. If for some reason you cannot go, you are not registered to vote and there's a problem, you can come on election day and you can register and vote on the same day in your precinct. You have to be in the correct precinct. So you got to go on your election jurisdiction webpage and figure out what precinct. So even if you miss the deadline, you can still register to vote. You're going to have 2 pieces of ID, one with your address on it, and you can vote on the same day. We're a pretty liberal state as far as registration. But we definitely want you to vote on a paper ballot. And it's good because there's going to be really close races, right?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
And speaking of races, you did mention that the electronic machines aren't going to be replaced until November. So that means with the Illinois Democratic primary that's going to be taking place on March 20th, we're going to be still having those same machines. So what is the current status of the voting machines, and how secure are they from any sort of tampering, election fraud from taking place? Because there are key seats that are up. There's, of course, the Illinois governor's race between the 6 candidates, Biss, Chris Kennedy, Pritzker, Theo Hardman, Bob Daber, and Robert Marshall. And then there's also the Illinois Attorney General race, as well as some key congressional seats, Illinois State Senate and House Representative seats as well. So I think a lot of viewers want to know how secure are the current machines from election fraud and tampering.
Absolutely. So don't vote on the touchscreen machines. We didn't, they weren't able to get the new machines in place for the March primary. We were pushing them, but they didn't do it. So please don't vote on those touchscreen machines. They are hackable from outside hacks, and they are definitely problematic from insider election fraud, inside the election jurisdiction. So please don't do it. Go on election day, vote on a paper ballot, ask for a paper ballot, or request a vote by mail. We really, really want you to do this because it's not only the governor's race and the attorney general's race, but also how about the assessor, Cook County assessor race? That is going to be a very, very...
That's between Fritz Craigie and Joseph Barry.
Right, that's a hot potato right there too. And there's a lot of races that are hot potatoes. So we really anticipate that there might be some recounts. And recounts on the paper ballots are a lot easier to do than on those big rolls. And did you know that when people vote on those touchscreen machines, only 30% of the voters even check the little window on the side to see that their votes are being accurately recorded? So there's no verification there. So we really want you to vote on a paper ballot. This is a really, really crucial primary. We really want you to vote on a paper ballot. And then we want you to sign up with cleancountcookcounty.org, cleancountcookcounty.org, and come in with us and be a citizen auditor. We, David Orr, clerk of the Cook County, David Orr, who manages the suburban Cook County elections, he is offering an unprecedented level of transparency for the voters this election. And we're going to go in and we're going to hand count 5% of the votes in 3 races. And we get to pick them after the election, depending on how close the race is and how much shenanigans we see in the race and things like that. I hate to use that word shenanigans because it's election fraud, but we're going to be able to pick them. So they're not going to know the races that we want them to count, okay, that we're going to count, and while they do the 5% retabulation, they're literally going to allow us to hand count these 3 races. And we need about 150 citizens to come in with us to the Hawthorne Center. It's at 4545 West Cermak, and help us count these ballots, okay? It'll be 1 day of people's time. If they go to our website, cleancountcookcounty.org, and sign up as a volunteer, then they'll get an email with a video, a training video, and then they'll be able to pick the day that they're going to come in. It's going to start 2 days after the election, March 22nd, and we're going to go in 7 a.m. to 3 or 4 p.m., and we're going to count ballots. We're going to count ballots. And I'm so sorry, but we can't pay people to do this, but it is an important civic duty, and it's only one day of your time. So we would really like people to join us with that. For that effort. So that's what's happening in suburban Cook County, and we were really excited about that. We have never had that level of transparency in either election jurisdictions ever before, okay? And in Chicago, for the voters in Chicago, we are going down and we're negotiating right now about the audits, the 5% retabulation. I don't know what we're going to get from the Chicago Board of Elections, but we're going to go try, okay? But we are going to take voters into that audit. Happens after the election, and so if you want to go into the Chicago Board of Elections, that's at Pershing and Damon. That's their warehouse. Then let us know when you sign up on cleancountcookcounty.org. Let us know if you want to go into Chicago or if you want to go into Cook County. And we are going to take citizen auditors down there and at least observe how they've reformed their process and see, what we think about the tallies. We'll go back down in there and see what we got. And we're trying to push them in Chicago to a higher level of transparency. But David Orr, definitely, he's paying attention.
All right, so now you also mentioned that there's a local race that you want to talk about.
Oh, yeah. So because we are so concerned about the elections, and we've seen so much fraud in Chicago, we've really been to a lot of precincts on election day for a long time, and we've seen pre-filled in ballots and ballot box stuffing and electioneering, where people go in to vote and they have little cards for the candidates and the voting booths and donut boxes that would vote for whoever right. Just we've seen a lot of stuff in Chicago, and a little bit in Cook County. Suburban Cook County is a cleaner shot for sure, but there's definitely pockets that we're really worried about, like Berwyn and Cicero. And so we've just seen a lot of stuff. So we really are concerned about who manages the election. And Chicago Board of Elections is an appointed board by Tim Evans, the head of the circuit court. And it's 2 Democrats and 1 Republican. And I have to tell you that there's a lot of Madigan influence, a lot of Rahm influence on who gets chosen to that board, okay? And we don't have any accountability to the voters. You never vote for the Chicago Board of Elections. It's just appointed for you. The clerk's office in suburban Cook County, that's an elected position. David Orr has been the clerk, and he's been elected to that position. He's stepping down, and I want you to know that a woman named, I'm forgetting her first name, but Yarborough is her last name. Karen Yarborough. So sorry, I blanked out there. Karen Yarborough is running for the clerk's position. And there were a number of different people citizens that tried to run for that office along with Karen Yarborough. And there's been all these ballot wars, and they've been knocked off left and right by the political machine, the Cook County machine. And Yarborough is very tied to the Cook County political machine. If you go on the Illinois Sunshine database, you can see all of the money that she's gotten from the Cook County Democratic Party. And so we're very, very worried about who takes control of the suburban Cook County elections. And so I think there's one woman that's still clinging on, and I think she's got another hearing. And I can't really verify for sure, how good a candidate she is, yet, because she's really taken her entire time to just try to stay on the ballot. And I do believe it's Jan Kowalski. There is another person that's running. And I believe that one of the candidates that got bumped, her name is Stephanie Joy Jackson Rowe. She is trying to come back on as a write-in candidate. And I can't verify how good a candidate that she is just yet, because she took all her time to stay on the ballot, but she's trying to come back as a write-in. So I want people to do their own homework on this one. I really do, because I believe, in a week or two, we should know really who's on the ballot and who's not going to be on the ballot. And they're going to just have to do their own homework on this one. We really need that office to stay clean, in good hands, good government, and not tied to the Democratic Party machine. So pay attention to that race too. They've put a lot of money into bumping off these candidates.
Now, real quick, I guess for our viewing audience who want to perhaps learn more about your organization, where can they find social media links to where they can volunteer and get involved?
Great, thanks for asking. So cleancountcookcounty.org. Clean count Cook County. That's what we want. We want a clean count in Chicago. We want a clean count in suburban Cook County. And so cleancountcookcounty.org. That's our main website. And then we are on Facebook, Clean Count Cook County on Facebook. So you can message us on either one. And if you want to join us, volunteer for our organization to be a citizen auditor, you can go on Clean Count Cook County and fill out the form, and we will contact you. And we really, really appreciate it. The antidote to election fraud is more citizen involvement, more eyes, more observability, more transparency. And we thank you for joining us.
And also there was a few other social media links that you were talking about in regards for citizen involvement, especially in regards to Tim Canova and what he's doing.
Oh, that's absolutely right. Okay, so Tim Canova, who's running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida, for Congress, he has really been on this issue of election fraud. He really followed the fraud against Bernie in the Democratic primaries, and there was fraud against him also in Broward County. People may recognize that the name of that county from the 2000 race when Bush committed fraud. Bush and his operatives committed fraud in Florida. So he's really on this issue, and there's a petition up at timcanova.com. timcanova.com, and the petition is, we demand criminal investigations of the mass purging and voter suppression in the 2016 Democratic presidential primaries. If we never get criminal prosecutions for election fraud, then they're going to just keep going with it. It is not, that's actually one of my pet peeves. It's not election shenanigans, okay? This is not a game. When they alter vote counts, when they purge voters, it is affecting you and I and everybody, because the people that are not getting the most votes, that are not the most popular with the voters, they're getting into office.
And thus, in turn, it cripples our democracy.
Absolutely.
And our lack of involvement, which has basically led to the rise of people being critical of the two-party establishment system, corporate media, and neoliberalism. And it's something that's going to really require voter involvement. So essentially, Dr. Lora Chamberlain, thank you so much for joining Heartlands Media. We are very happy to have you here at the Q4 radio station, and definitely want to thank the people at CAN TV for supplying us the equipment so we can conduct this interview. And to all our viewers, subscribers who follow us, we're on Q4 Radio every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and we also have a Spreaker account so you can listen to more of our content. I think it's really important that we have voter involvement and people actually get actively involved, because if we don't, we're going to have a continued system of corruption, money in politics dictating how our government's going to be run. And lastly, it's an embarrassment on an international level, because here, the United States proclaims itself to be this proud bastion of human rights and democracy, but constantly we're seeing a failure in our system. So to our viewing audience, peace, and let's all do what we can to build a better future.
You're watching Heartlands Media.